President Trump delivering the first official State of the Union address of his second term. Affordability, a top issue for many voters. And now the Wall Street Journal reporting Trump is going to use these remarks to sell the public on the economy and unveil new measures meant to help lower costs. His address comes as new polls show the president's approval rating falling, in particular among independents. According to a new NPR PBS News Marist poll, 60% of Americans say the country is worse off than it was a year ago, including about 2/3 of independents. Trump's address tonight comes as his administration faces several challenges. The president's immigration crackdown is broadly unpopular. The Supreme Court just curtailed his sweeping tariffs. There's uncertainty about where things stand with Iran and continued criticism about a lack of transparency over the Jeffrey Epstein files. It's a lot for the president to tackle and a lot for us to get into with national political reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas. So, Ken, your outlet, the Wall Street Journal, got the exclusive on what the key focus is going to be tonight. That its affordability, I think, is notable. But it also comes as the president has, even when he's done speeches on affordability, managed to still say that it's a Democratic hoax. And so do you imagine that he's A, on script, because you know what happens when he gets in front of a crowd, and B, what is the focus of an affordability message at this critical point ahead of the midterms?
Right. I mean, the context is everything here.
Yeah.
You know, this is a speech that he will deliver days after the Supreme Court struck down his tariffs agenda. And so we will look for how he will pivot, how he will talk about the economy. White House officials have told me and my colleagues that, you know, the economy will be a heavy focus. We should expect him to talk about some of the accomplishments that they've achieved in the past year. I think you'll hear a lot about the tax law, some of the big rebate checks that are coming back through the system. I think you're also going to see a focus on prescription drugs, affordability within the healthcare space. That's an issue that polls very well, and they want to talk about more transparency, lowering healthcare and prescription drug costs. Yeah. But, you know, I think this is an important moment for the president. You know, this is an audience that will probably be somewhere in the 30 millions of people. This is probably his biggest audience before the midterm election. So it's an opportunity for him to try to persuade some of those independents, some of those younger voters, some of those Latino voters who were with him in 2024 and have seemed to go by the wayside.
Yeah, go by the wayside in large part because they feel like this administration has overreached. Frankly, I heard it over the weekend when I was doing some reporting in Texas. I met voters, Republicans, who said, I just picked up a Democratic ballot for the first time because on immigration, I don't understand what we're doing here, right? So I do think that there's the polls that show us that, and then meeting people who can explain it in the exact way that polls are telling us that the shift is happening is stunning. I think the other piece of it, too, is the way that who's in that room is going to sort of tell a message about where both parties want the focus to be, right? Of course, the administration always bring guests that are favorable to them. Wonder if you can talk a little bit about what we know on that front. And then, of course, the fact that for Democrats, even some who don't plan on being in the room themselves, they are thinking about bringing survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and other people who have been negatively impacted by the Trump administration's policies.
Right. There will be a number of people in the venue who will help the president talk about some of his policies, you know, people who have benefited from them. I think we, you know, may see some USA hockey players, for example. I think that will be a patriotic
The men,
moment.
not the women.
Correct. You know, the theme of the speech is America at 250. So it's going to be a nod to the 250th anniversary that we'll be celebrating in July. But no, I think that, you know, he has this opportunity here. He will have, you know, certainly he will be met with some opposition. It's more, you know, since the Joe Wilson moment in the Obama administration.
You lie.
Correct. Yeah. I think, you know, you're likely to have some kind of protest on the floor. I know the leadership always asks their members to keep to the decorum, but, you know, we just have had in recent years some kind of standoff. It would not be shocking to see something like that again.
Yeah, I mean, even Al Green last year, and then he was censured for it after. I think that My understanding from my sources on the Hill is Democratic leadership would love to avoid that as an optic. Instead, they want the guests to tell the message. But they also, of course, have their own messenger, because following the president's address, Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger is set to deliver the Democratic response. This, of course, comes just months after she resoundingly won an office previously held by a Republican, Glenn Youngkin, in Virginia. Democratic Senator Alex Padilla of California is also set to deliver the Spanish language rebuttal for the party. Meanwhile, a growing number of Democrats are planning to skip President Trump's address altogether. Many are expected to attend a People's State of the Union rally being held on the National Mall. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, as I was just mentioning, has urged Democrats to either sit in silent defiance during Trump's marks or not attend at all. And I think the thing that I'm sort of looking at and wondering is, for someone like Spanberger, who was able, I think, to re-energize a Democratic base, her, Mikey Sherrill, Zohran Mamdani, in very different ways. They energized them in November. But what does it look like to cast a rebuttal to a Democratic message? And why did they go outside Washington to do it?
Yeah, it's always a hard speech to deliver.
Tough.
But it sends a message. You go outside Washington, you go to a new governor, somebody who is not tied to the Washington persona.
Yeah.
And Spanberger, Sherrill, Mamdani, they all talked about affordability in their campaigns.
Yeah.
I think you're going to hear a lot about that. And for Democrats, this is an opportunity as well. While polls have shown that a lot of people are growing tired of President Trump and are unhappy with some of his policies, it's not like Democrats are necessarily viewed very well and considered with a lot of praise. So I think this is an opportunity for Democrats to show an alternative, to say what they would be focused on if they are given control of the House and or Senate.
I think it's a great point that you make, because just because we see the president's ratings going like this doesn't mean Democrats are just automatically going up. They have not yet sold the American public on whatever their vision is, other than just, I'm a counter to President Trump. Ultimately, 2-second response, do you think he stays on script?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair bet. We've been at this a long enough time to make that as a fair assessment. National political reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas. I hope you take a nap. I will be before we do the speech tonight. Thank you, as always, for coming on. Want to get a few more headlines on your radar before we go to the break. Mexico has now deployed more than 10,000 troops to contain violent clashes erupting in several areas after Mexican forces killed the country's most wanted drug cartel leader, known as El Mencho. Visitors and residents in the traditional tourist hotspot of Puerto Vallarta reported burning vehicles and empty highways as cartel retaliation spread across the region. U.S. authorities have advised Americans there to shelter in place as major cruise lines and airlines rerouted or altogether canceled travel. However, other major airports, including Mexico City and Cancun, have not been affected. Meanwhile, British police say former UK ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, has been released on bail after being arrested in a misconduct probe stemming from his ties to the late Jeffrey Epstein. London's Metropolitan Police began an investigation into Mandelson earlier this month after the release of new material by the DOJ appeared to show Mandelson potentially gave confidential and market-sensitive information to Epstein in 2009. That's when he was a senior cabinet minister. Mandelson has not been charged with a crime and does not face allegations of sexual misconduct. The arrest is the latest development, though, in the UK's investigations into prominent figures over their suspected dealings with Epstein. It comes just 4 days after police arrested and released former Prince Andrew amid an Epstein-related probe. We've said this before on this program. I have a feeling we're going to keep saying it. Accountability is happening, just not here, at least not yet.